All right. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to this next episode of Futurist Frontiers. Thanks for joining. I am Ajay, one of the co-founders of Disruptor DAO, where we are on a mission to educate and invest in disruptive technologies in Web3. Today, we are having a conversation with Joanna Summers. Very grateful and excited to have you with us, Joanna. Joanna is a crypto and asset forfeiture specialist and consulting, advising fintech and government organizations on digital asset management, fraud prevention, and regulatory compliance. Previously, as chief recovery officer at a tech startup, she shaped SaaS solutions for government asset forfeiture programs worldwide. With over a decade in the U.S. Marshal Service, Joanna pioneered cryptocurrency forfeiture processes and managed billions in seized assets. She's an ambassador for the Association of Women in Cryptocurrency, and she holds an MS degree in finance from Johns Hopkins University. So, welcome, Joanna. We will have a conversation about the future today. Super excited. Please share more about you and your journey. How did you get into this space? We're super excited, and all of your experience. We're very excited to learn more.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And to everyone at Disruptor DAO, I'm super excited to be here today. I absolutely love interacting with everyone who wants to learn more in the space. And I think we all know in the crypto space, like there's no shortage of things you can learn. The learning's never done, right? So a little bit more on my background. I was with the U.S. Marshal Service for about 10 years. And before that, I was with DOD, was getting my master's in finance. And I had this amazing opportunity to come over to the Marshal Service and work in the asset forfeiture division. And it's such a cool mission because you know how everything you're doing actually makes a huge impact in society. Like, helping victims of crimes get funds returned from them. Of course, we can never make anyone who's a victim of a crime whole. But, if you can do your piece to help maybe return some funds or help out family members, I immediately found the work really, really rewarding. So I ran what was called the complex assets unit there. And my unit was responsible for any ongoing business or complex financial instrument that was subject to federal forfeiture. So anything on the Department of Justice side of the house, from FBI, DEA, ATF, that they were looking to seize and forfeit, I would have those pre-seizure conversations with the U.S. attorney's offices on, hey, is this hotel or this car wash or this financial instrument, is this worth taking? Is there value in it? Are we going to be able to liquidate it and make a profit on it to return funds to victims? Or if there are no victims, does this make sense to take it to put money into the asset forfeiture fund? So kind of walking through the whole process from the pre-seizure stage to liquidation. And I think I was incredibly fortunate while I was there because just a few months after I started, we got a call saying, hey, we're going to need you to take some cryptocurrency in this case called Silk Road. And I thought, okay, I've heard of this before. Sure, we'll figure it out. Well, they didn't tell me they were sending me 175,000 Bitcoin. And from there, wow, I had this amazing experience where I got to develop the cryptocurrency program for DOJ. So everything from how to custody it, audit it, have security and internal controls, and then ultimately liquidation of it or return if someone was found innocent in a case. And it was really cool because we just watched the program explode. It started with Bitcoin. And at the time, Bitcoin was valued at, say, $250 to $600 per coin. So we're going, is this here to stay? Do we really need to build a whole program around this? Let's wait and see. And then very quickly, more people started seizing crypto. It became Ethereum as well as Bitcoin. Then it became 10 more currencies. And then it expanded into what we have today, which is just so many different avenues. So yeah, that was really the impetus for me getting into crypto, which has been really, really fun. And then from there, 3 years ago, I decided to go to the private sector and do what I can in the space from the private side.
Awesome. That is fascinating. So I would love for someone to do those quick numbers on, what that Bitcoin is worth today, with all of the growth and the transformation. Like you said, all the other cryptocurrencies and the growth of the technology since then has really become so robust. So I can only imagine, the state of the program, like where it is now, and things that business owners need to be thinking about in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. When we first started, we just didn't have the benefit of really regulated exchanges. When we got the Silk Road Bitcoin, the Mt. Gox exchange had just collapsed. So we knew right away we couldn't leave everything in a hot wallet on an exchange. We'd have to keep it in cold storage. And that's fine. You're in a secure building, you have multiple people, so you can implement some of the security protocols that you would have for any other asset type, having a witness, having forms to sign off on it, keeping records. But really, the program took shape as we went along because we had newer technology like a Trezor device or Ledger wallets for cold storage. And then we saw the exchanges start to kind of take these two paths where it was like, some were very anti-government relations and wanted to stay in that shadowy darkness of the wild, wild west of crypto. And others, fully embraced government intervention and were like, hey, we really want to bring this mainstream, like this technology beyond just what we were doing at the Marshal Service. This technology is going to be revolutionary. So we want to be viewed in a positive light, and we want to come in line with any type of AML compliance or know your customer KYC transactions. So over time, the program definitely evolved into not just being this public sector thing where we didn't want help from the private sector. It became a public-private partnership very quickly because we saw how innovative the space was being. So, at first I was using cold storage for everything. And now Marshal Service, when I was still there in 2019, we did a procurement to hire a vendor for custody. And it took a while to get it done. It's actually still just getting done now. But we realized it was going to be really beneficial to work with private sector and move out of just that cold storage metric and, have a system that was auditable, that included blockchain technology, because obviously government systems, they're generally kind of dated in the first place. So it wasn't anyone's fault. The assets were tracked and managed and easily accounted for, but there was no easy way to account for things like airdrops or hard forks of currency. And then, you kind of were always playing catch up with issues like that and making sure that everything was appropriately categorized. So yeah, so many things just pop up when you work in the crypto space.
Yeah, and so many things to consider. I want to invite folks who are watching us on YouTube or even in the StreamYard to please drop your questions for Joanna as we're going through, and we can definitely acknowledge them here. So Joanna, what you just spoke to really brought up questions of, if we are, if you're a business owner or, traditionally any type of business owner, what are the types of things that we should be thinking about as we are setting up a wallet infrastructure, from the regulatory side to also, like you said, considering cold storage, hot storage, and then also third parties? Like, what are some things to be of consideration for that?
Sure. So you want to work with a regulated exchange, someone that has KYC, AML measures in place, someone that's taking, that information seriously. One of the things I've seen on LinkedIn a lot lately is people hiring crypto compliance specialists, which I think is such a good sign, because it says to me that people in banking and the financial sectors are realizing the importance of folding in that type of technology and also having compliance around it. So there's so many great experts out there that are so into the compliance aspect of it and what a robust program should look like. I'm really excited to see that being utilized. But I would say in general, you want something that has those strong internal controls, like a SOC 1 and a SOC 2. So they've been through security checks. You want something that, has whatever the legislation deems necessary. So whether that's some sort of SEC approval or some sort of international approval, like in the EU and the UK, there's ISO, which is similar to our SOC compliance in the US. And you just want to see that they're being innovative and that they're leaders in the space, I think. So I think all that's really important. And I think just the space in general, like the future of crypto and blockchain, I think there's just going to be this mainstream integration of it. You were talking about small businesses. I think it's going to quickly become this foundational layer for efficient, transparent systems across like a variety of industries, whether it's healthcare or real estate. I think you're going to see so many different fields getting more into like the AI and automated systems, and all the problems that come with it that require some compliance.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk more about that compliance and the policy piece. As you just kind of noted to Genius Act and Clarity Act, like the United States government is really putting some measures in place that's going to transform how we transact and do business and all these things with our digital assets and the intersections of fiat and so many things to consider, right? So could you just talk a little bit more about that again from the lens of what those, new regulatory measures mean, what it looks like for the future, and again, as we're protecting our digital assets, what businesses and companies could look forward to.
Yeah, so I think regulatory clarity has been a long time coming, and I'm really excited that so much progress has been made on it this year. The government's really embraced exploring blockchain, and institutional stability in it. So we've got the Genius Act, which is focused on stablecoins, and that's working in parallel with the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, which just goes by the Clarity Act. So passed in the House in July of this year. And that's helping categorize digital assets as securities, commodities, or stable coins. And it's assigning that jurisdictional ownership. So is it the CFTC monitoring it, if it's a commodity, or is it going over to the SEC? I think we've seen a lot of drama in the past few years of fighting over that jurisdictional authority. And it's nice to see the clarity around who does what, because I think as government creates those swim lanes of who does what, it's easier for everyone to move forward with policies and progress than, when everyone's kind of fighting over who's going to do what and when and who controls it. So I think the broader implication here is it's going to help small businesses use blockchain for like non-stablecoin assets, like a tokenized property deed if you're talking about real estate. And it's going to help companies feel confident that they can navigate regulations without fear of those like SEC enforcement actions. So I think with like a cohesive framework, it's going to reduce that regulatory limbo that's maybe stifled some crypto innovation. And it's going to make small businesses and large businesses feel more secure about embracing the technology without fear of, doing something wrong on your taxes or doing something wrong with the SEC.
Yeah. Yes, for sure, right? And really ushering in like Web3, you know what I mean? So because we're really living in a transient time where there will be an intersection of fiat traditional business, and you kind of alluded to a bit earlier of the folks who are decentralist, and really believe in the power of decentralization and not being connected to the government in certain ways, but then also you have folks who are like, let's embrace this world. So and thinking about wanting to shift gears just a little bit, how might people think about, again, securing our digital landscape? And well, let's backtrack and do a little intersection, because you do have folks who are, wanting to move away from traditional banking systems, but then now you have the banks really, embracing cryptocurrency now, right? And digital assets. So, what would be, what are your thoughts on that, and your advice on, how do we move forward with a lens of opportunity, I should say, and recognize from your vantage point of what does the future look like with these intersections, again, for individuals and businesses, and just kind of what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think there's still so much education that needs to be done in the space. And I'm really excited that people are starting to embrace it, though, because I think that whole group of people that thought crypto was a fad or like it's only used by criminals, I think really incorporating this into mainstream businesses gives it that legitimacy between that and regulation to say, like, this is here to stay and it's okay to use this technology. And I think there's just so many different use cases for it. I think, you mentioned earlier about like integrating stablecoin payments, I think is a great one. Like having wallet literacy, knowing how to transfer crypto, just safety and best practices for using stablecoins like USDC and USDT. I think they can be a game changer for small businesses because they offer that fast, low cost payment that's pegged 1-to-1 to the dollar. So you don't have volatility. They streamline transactions from B2B and business consumer, and it helps reduce fees, right? So like there's 2 to 3% transfer fees, the interest fees, the credit card transferring processing fees, the remittance payments fees, like someone like Western Union taking 30% to issue a remittance payment. I think those days are over, and everyone's learning how to adapt and find ways to fit this into their business model, because why go that route when you could use something like a stable coin and settle in minutes versus days? Not to go off on a tangent, but it always annoys me when I deposit a check and it takes like 10 days for it to clear. And I'm like, why is my money pending 10 days when I've had an account at this financial institution for, I don't know, 30 years at this point? Like, I just think it's kind of odd that things are still that slow when you've got this type of technology out there. So yeah, I think for integration. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I'm just going to say, or even when like contracting, right, for businesses, it's like you submit a contract and you can pay out maybe in 30 days. I mean, you submit your invoice, you pay out maybe in 30 days. Like, what's going on with that, right? And so, blockchain technology in and of itself, and then because all of these things definitely provide opportunities for, more productivity to take place within our economy, quite frankly.
Absolutely. And like to your point, you could issue a smart contract to pay upon certain metrics being met. And then that reduces that, human error. It reduces fraud. It helps automate things. And that's not to say you can set it and forget it. I mean, you still need people to do the compliance and look over everything. But some things that are maybe taking up time that they don't need to be, certain tasks could be eliminated with the use of something like a smart contract to do that.
Yeah, it's definitely a revolutionary time. I'm so glad I asked that question, because it's definitely an entree into the next point of, many people think about cybersecurity in terms of like passwords, phishing, those type of things. But in your experience, what are some less obvious ways that individuals and organizations leave themselves vulnerable with their digital footprint?
Yeah, so just backing from that question a little bit, a lot of the work that I do now, I'm doing consulting work for a variety of fintech organizations, banks, cyber security, fraud. They're all looking to have better government relations, and it's public-private partnerships, right? And I spend a lot of time working on fraud prevention. I actually just got back from the IIFCI conference in Oklahoma City, where we talked about all these different fraud trends, whether it's crypto or just, traditional fraud trends and what we're seeing. And I know one of the big ones, and we're part of Operation Shamrock, which is Aaron West's initiative to help stop pig butchering schemes. So you look at some of these scams and they're really layered and complex. So in a pig butchering scheme, you've got your traditional fraud, right? It's an investment scheme, it's a romance fraud, but it's got this crypto twist to it where the scam centers are getting anyone. It's not just elderly, it's people of all ages who are just vulnerable, who are lonely, who maybe misinterpret a text message. It's getting them to basically be swindled out of their money through a cryptocurrency lens. And the reason I say it's complicated is because the people doing the scamming are also victims. They're victims of human trafficking. They're put into these scam centers. They've come to countries in Southeast Asia or other places in the world under a false lens of they were getting a job or they were going into a new career. And then upon arrival, their passports are taken for them and they're, blackmailed into working in these scam centers. So it's horrible crimes like all around. And I think what we see when we start to look at some of these scams is that there's all different avenues of how companies and individuals are being taken advantage of. On the individual side, I would say those spam text messages are a really big deal because it's usually a pig butchering scheme. So they're like, hi, how are you today? Like, do you want to come to this barbecue? And you don't know the number. They're just throwing something out there to see if you respond. And a lot of that's done with AI bots too. So like the scale of it is just growing. And then I think from a business perspective, one of the big ones I see is the voice impersonation. It used to be if you wanted a second person to confirm a transaction for you, maybe you called your boss and you said, yeah, I'm authorizing this transaction. Like, yeah, it was me who sent the email. My email wasn't compromised. But now your voice can be compromised because it's really easy to replicate that now. So I think that there's a lot of different ways that the fraudsters are affecting industry. They're exploiting these AI capabilities in social engineering schemes, in data analytics, in automation and content generation. And it's these really sophisticated scams that are bypassing traditional security measures. The good news is there are a lot of companies out there doing great work to help. One of them is Group IB, and another one is called Scamnetic. And I think that they're both doing really great work in the space, stopping these scams from happening, whether it's, working with automated threat responses if something hits your computer and it triggers a certain warning, or whether it's just like doing advanced fraud detection capability to kind of root out some of those issues. And then, other app examples I see like on the Scamnetic front and a few others are like an integration with banks and financial institutions to on the front end ask you, hey, are you sure you want to do this transaction? Like, we're categorizing this as high risk. Because one of the things we see a lot with especially like scam victims is they're embarrassed, right? They don't want to come forward. They don't want to admit they're being scammed. So we really like the idea of technology that helps put it back in the user's control. Like if you could just privately go on an app and ask like, hey, is this transaction legitimate? That might be like a lot easier individually to do than feeling like I would ask my kids or I'd ask my family, but I'm afraid they're going to be like, that's it. Mom's lost her mind. Like she's falling victim to scams. Like, people like worried about their family overreacting. So I think, there's user controls to keep it in your own hands and maybe ask your own questions and do your own diligence are huge.
Okay. So yeah, what do we do? Like, what do we do?
Yeah.
What type of like safeguard measures should we put in place? Folks like, create a code word with your family and what do we do?
Yeah, I think we got to fight fire with fire. The fraudsters and the scammers are using AI, so we need to make sure that we are using AI as well. I mean, we need to make sure that we're staying in front of the threat, threat mitigation measures to protect everyone from them. Because look, as a country, I think it's great that we have sanctions on countries that, violate this stuff. But sanctions are like the back end result of a lengthy, litigious process. So it's like that pre-fraud detection and prevention is really key. Like stopping this before it happens is really like what we need to be focused on. And I think I would ask that everyone working in any sector that has the ability to play with some of these tools looks to check them out, whether it's, just a short subscription or a trial of it. Like, see what different companies are out there. I work with a lot of them that could really help integrate and just what's going to make a difference. Because I think when you start to get into it, it is really scary. Like when you see a review of some companies and they're like, hey, we found 87 ways in which you're super vulnerable that you probably didn't even know about. I mean, I find a lot of it very overwhelming too, because I'm not an engineer. I mean, I understand what's going on, but I'm not an engineer. I don't write the coding. So I don't even know what I don't know sometimes, right? There can be things out there that are wrong that you don't even catch. And then I think just general education, knowing the signs of a scam or a business email compromise scheme, not clicking on emails that look like, there's something misspelled or something's a little off, and making sure that you're reporting that to your IT departments and that you've got a really, really good CTO in there that's making sure your company is safe and protected. But I think it's just going to be an ongoing concern, don't you? Don't you think it's going to be an ongoing, there's never going to be a check the box, good, we prevented all this. It's going to keep evolving.
It is, and it's going to continue, especially with the intersections of AI. But I appreciate blockchain because, a lot of folks rave that blockchain will provide some guardrails for AI and being able to discern, what's real, what's not, what's fraudulent, and all these
Mm-hmm.
things. But what also comes to mind is the opportunity for us to create, like you said, systems within ourselves to say, like, processes, kind of what you just talked about, having did you send this email? Is this real? Like looking at, the flows of transactions and being like, wait a minute, let's onboarding your team,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
having like a security protocol for your team as it
Mm-hmm.
relates to, your digital assets, your emails, the various footprints of our data, which kind of brings up the next question. It's like, our data's out there for the
Mm-hmm.
world to just get, and it seems to be like nothing we can do about it. But I wonder, like, you know, how do we better protect our digital footprint, knowing that, when you Google yourself nowadays, they show everything from when you first came into the scene. So, like, what can you kind of do as
Yeah.
to protect? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a really great question because it's a little scary out there. This information is out there and there are ways to maybe like scrub your records, but it's an ongoing monitoring situation to me. Like you need to make sure you have the right cybersecurity partner that's like working with your business and your needs to have end-to-end risk management. So
Yeah.
I think just having really strong cybersecurity, making sure the people in your organization who have access to like risk to sensitive data is as less risky as possible. Like, do only the right people have access? Do you have
Yeah.
strong internal controls? And that kind of plays into policies and procedures too. We had so many of them in the federal government, and I created a lot of them, and I've helped a lot of asset forfeiture units worldwide create policies and procedures for internal controls. I think that's incredibly important at small businesses too, because if you follow the same process and procedure every time, it's going to be a lot easier for someone internally to notice if something's amiss. Like, hey, why did they take this step? That's out of the norm. Or like, why is someone saying this is a rush and they need it immediately? Like, our protocol is we wait a few hours. It's things like that that kind of help tip you off to any type of scam that's going on, let's say. But yeah, I mean, I think just cybersecurity management in general, it's a tough question to answer, but it has to be answered because something like, half of cyber attacks are aimed at small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some really small percentage, like 10 to 15%, are actually like equipped with the right cybersecurity
Mm-hmm.
to, ward off an attack.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of also gets into a question we got into in the chat, from Marcus. And the question reads, for a future view of the United States, can you explain the importance of onboarding our country into having family wallets for secure digital asset literacy, not literacy, sorry, for digital asset legacy transfer, and how to protect that too, right?
Yeah, how do we not have digital assets end up being unclaimed property at the state?
Mm.
And like making sure that this is part of your estate planning. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's going to be a huge need for any type of financial institution that's handling not only 401ks, but any type of crypto investment. If you have your own crypto, whether it's in a hard wallet or you have it on an exchange, like how does that get transferred to the next person? Like who's the beneficiary of it? And I think those are questions that estate planners are going to need to ask going forward. I think some of the hard wallet providers are starting to flag that for people to say like, hey, just a reminder, not your keys, not your coins, right? So like whoever has those private keys controls the wallet and the contents of it. So if you have your private keys in a safe, does a family member have a second copy of them? Like who has access to actually move that? And does your family know you have it? I mean, I understand, especially people who might have bought crypto way back in the day and are sitting on a lot of it. Maybe they don't want to tell anyone right away, but you need to have that information secured somewhere. So there's a succession plan for your family. I mean, I think that that's really important going forward because I think we're just going to see such an increase in everyday consumers owning cryptocurrency.
Yeah, and that's like, what does the everyday, individual do? And especially too, as the government begins to intertwine digital assets and blockchain into their systems from like, I've heard things about like giving veterans benefits in digital assets and other types of benefits in digital assets, like, unfortunately, I can just see all kinds of fraud happening. So like,
Yeah.
what can an everyday person do, or what should we be thinking about with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should be really taking a critical look at the workflow and seeing where there's gaps and how to fill them. And I think it's definitely a whole country effort. Like whether you're at a bank or a financial institution or you're working in the government, I think everyone has a role to play in seeing like the weaknesses in their part of the process and how to better equip yourself to handle them. And I do think in a lot of ways, blockchain technology reduces that risk of fraud because it's not you looking at a signature or a license and making a personal determination if someone gets a benefit. It's more algorithm based. So I think that does remove a lot of the fraud, but there's always going to be fraud and new schemes. So
It's
yeah,
been
I
going on
think
since the beginning of time. So
yeah, exactly. It's a tale as old as time. So
yeah.
yeah, I think you kind of need to look through it and see like what your vulnerabilities are, especially like any type of unpatched exposure or social engineering scam. You don't want identity theft. But I do think blockchain technology could help reduce that identity theft and then help confirm like, yes, the right person is getting these benefits.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so this leads kind of back to what you kind of already mentioned, families having, wallets for legacy transfer, individuals having wallets, what the future looks like for, governmental allocations, businesses having wallet, everybody has a wallet. And so, what do you see as the future of this space from like, a future of work stance, and then also that juxtaposed with, or the future of like careers, what type of careers do people get into? And then like, what does the life look like? What does the transactions look like? What can we kind of anticipate in the future?
Yeah, so one of my favorite things about this space is I'm really seeing the younger generation take an interest in it. And one of the things that I'm trying to change in the space, because I'm really sad to hear it, is I'm finding a lot of people don't even know some of these careers exist. So I spoke earlier this year at the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners annual conference, and I was shocked how many students and I'd say, working adults under 30 came up to me and were like, wow, I'm working at, insert financial institution, and I'd love to hear more about this and what you're doing and what you're working on. I didn't even know this was a career I could get into, and I really want to get into this space, and I want to make sure, we're not a victim of a crime and that we help our clients not become victims of crimes. So like it was really inspiring because it's cool how many people are out there and want to help do good work. And I think part of the problem is people don't know about some of the fields. So I think things like LinkedIn are your best friend because as you start to follow people in the space, you'll find out about more initiatives. So I think getting involved in these different initiatives, something like the Association for Women in Cryptocurrency that you mentioned earlier. We do a lot of work with students and mentoring them and also holding events. Like it's everything from the C-suite to managers to students. So you go to a networking event and you get to hear about all the different roles and all the amazing work that people are doing in the space. And I think exposing yourself to that at the university level is really helpful because then you start to get like a feel for what other roles are out there. Another initiative that I work with is the Justice for Fraud Victims Project. So they have students, like at my alma mater, University of Maryland, they just had students solve a murder case. And long story short, the impetus was a financial crime. So they did a forensic investigations. But how cool is it that like students got to do a forensic examination that eventually led to solving a murder? And I know that inspired so many kids in that class to learn more about the space and more about the different avenues in it. So I think crypto compliance jobs will become more common. We're seeing a lot more of that. And I think just people having a general understanding of blockchain technology and its uses will become more common. I think you'll start to see it developed more at the university level. And I think people will start to leave university or even just a continuing education class with a better understanding of how it can help in the space. So I think there's like a long way to go, but it's starting to accelerate more now.
It is, but what I'm also hearing in what you just said is like the power of multi-stakeholder relationships. Like you got the university working with the police department, working with probably another private entity. So that's definitely going to be something that we're going to see more of, I can see in the future, with understanding that and as technology has so many intersections, and Web3, we talk about interoperability, right? Like, these various entities working together. And we're going to see that in the real world. I love how you mentioned about this student project, and I know that was really transformative for them, and it really provides opportunities for public-private entities to work together to create real outcomes, real use cases, and share with students now, like give them exposure now as to what this life would look like as a career.
Yeah, because crypto moves at the click of a button. We all know this, right? Like it moves so quickly that I think you need to have that foundational understanding, like as you're growing up with it and knowing how it's going to translate into your role. Like one of the companies that I work very closely with is CypherOwl. They do blockchain analytics, and they offer real-time programmable compliance across any type of screening, reporting, research. It's a blockchain investigations tool, and it's incredible. And I think that real time is so important. If it's real-time fraud prevention, if it's real-time screening across compliance programs, these frauds are happening in real time, right? Like threats are happening in real time. So we need to be able to respond immediately. It's not helpful at the end of the week to do a report and find out like, oh, a bunch of things went missing, or there were all these problems on Monday. Like you need to know the second it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And that gets into like what you've been saying, the policies and procedures. And it also ties into, I see a question here from Zawadi. It's a two-part question. She says, earlier you mentioned, and then you just mentioned again now, businesses beginning to hire companies to make sure that they are crypto compliant. Are those services cost prohibitive for small scale startups? And if so, what are the other ways that startups can make sure that they are compliant? Although we're embarking on new territory, are government initiatives being set up to provide information and or protect businesses?
That is a great question. And I absolutely understand the concern as a small business of, you don't have unlimited funds. So I would say a few things for that. I think there are a lot of organizations out there that can help. Like I was mentioning, I was just at that IAFCI conference. I think you've got access to a huge network and training through that. And I think the training is really key. I think also, if you can't, afford a full-time position, to lean on that university work that you and I were just talking about. There are projects that, students are really excited and hungry to help, and it's mutually beneficial, right? Like you get something solved at your company and they get real world exposure and come out, even stronger in the workforce once they graduate. And we see that sometimes through hackathons and events like that too. In terms of making sure you're compliant, I think just staying up to date on what's going on policy-wise and just doing your research is really important. And yeah, we are definitely embarking on new territory. And I do think there are government initiatives being set up to provide that information. One that I've seen that I have my eye on that's not there yet, but you can keep an eye on it too, is Senator Britt is pushing this bipartisan GUARD Act. And the GUARD Act is to fight crypto scams against seniors. And this plays into the bigger picture because what they're looking to do is offer grant funds to state, local, and federal agencies to help provide those investigations tools, the training, the fraud investigation software to help fight financial fraud, pig butchering schemes, general financial fraud. And I think it's been really nice to see a little bit more of a focus on that and the issue to be taken so seriously because, in my opinion, that level of fraud has risen to a level of national security. We normally know it's like nation state actors behind it. And we need to be prepared to defend against it. And I'm glad to see people starting to take it for the level of seriousness that it is.
Yeah, for sure. Could you talk a little bit, because you said a couple of different acronyms or jargons. You just mentioned pig picturing schemes. Could you just break down for our viewers what those look like, what they are? Some of the common kind of schemes that we know to exist, but didn't realize, like, oh, that's what that is.
Yeah, so pig butchering in particular is a type of scheme where it's a combo of a romance scam and an investment scam. And they target everyone. Over $75 billion was lost globally to pig butchering scams in 2023 alone. And that's according to the FBI's IC3 network, which is the Internet Crime Complaint Center. So that number is really just anyone with a US nexus who's been victim to a scam who's reported. So the scary thing is the number's probably a lot higher. And what happens is people just do these phishing attempts where you get these random messages. And, if you're lonely, if maybe your spouse has just passed away, or you're just going through a lonely time in your life, maybe you respond to one of those messages and you're like, no, sorry, you have the wrong number. And then they start this like innocent conversation with you, and they're like, oh, like, how's your day anyway? And before you know it, you're in this very sophisticated scam where they're emotionally preying on you, and they really build your rapport. And then after a while, they say, I have this great investment opportunity, and we're going to walk you through how to invest with us. And then, maybe you could just flip it to crypto, and we're going to walk you through how to do it. And there's a lot of signs to look for. Anyone pressing you to urgently donate money to a cause here, anyone pressing you to invest your money, times when you haven't met someone in person and they refuse to meet in person. Or maybe they say they're living in Michigan, but you can kind of tell by the words they're using that they don't really sound American. Like something's not really lining up. Like they don't really have any cultural references, and it just kind of seems off. First off, never respond to those messages. Delete and report them as junk. But what we see are these sophisticated scams where people are becoming victim to that. And, it's billions and billions of dollars that are being lost to investment fraud in general. It's just that in the $4.6 billion that was lost to investment fraud in the US alone in the last few years, pig butchering has really risen as one of the major contributors of that. And the victims are all targeted through dating apps, social media, and it's like this social engineering investment romance scam.
Wow. And at least it's a question
I know, right?
Had coming into the chat. It's like, who do you report to, right? So Dr. Eve asked for a senior had already been scammed and lost their crypto and reported it to the FBI. Is it worth following up with local law enforcement? Is reported to or take another route? Some members have been scammed by imposters pretending to be the Geek Squad. So like, who do you report this to? How, what do you do when you're in the flow of this happening to you?
Yeah, those are great questions. Unfortunately, I think it's important to be really honest with people and just say up front, your chances of asset recovery when you've lost crypto are very low. So anyone promising you that they can get your cryptocurrency back, anyone telling you, hey, if you just pay me a $10,000 retainer and we'll get right to work on this case, you are going to be re-victimized. That is not how this works. You do need to report to law enforcement. You need to report it to IC3, which is the Internet Crime Complaint Center. That is the central hub for reporting cyber-enabled crime, any type of cyber-enabled crime. It's run by the FBI. You do need to be a US citizen to report through it. But what they do is they keep your information on file then. So maybe your scammer hasn't been caught, but maybe they are in the future, because we know these aren't one-off events, right? Like they didn't just scam you. There's an entire process going on here where they're scamming as many people as they can. So hopefully at some point they get prosecuted, and once you've reported that information's there, so you'll be someone that will be notified as, hey, we think you were a potential victim of this. If you could provide us this information once they've prosecuted, you might stand a chance at getting some restitution from it. it is difficult federally to get them to pick up the case because this is so prevalent that the dollar figure needs to be very, very high for them to take it federally. But that said, I do a lot of work with state and local law enforcement. They are all getting trained up on crypto investigations, and they're all seeing a lot of this type of issue, people coming in having been victims of these scams. So yes, I definitely think you should take it to your local law enforcement in addition to having reported it to the FBI. And to the point about people pretending to be Geek Squad. Yeah, you don't ever, no FBI agent's going to call you and tell you they're calling you on behalf of Capital One and trying to get you to invest in something like. Yeah. So it's definitely a red flag that it's a scam. So I would say also look out to initiatives like Operation Shamrock that offers a ton of free resources on red flags to look for that are parts of scams.
Yeah. And we've also seen like those crypto wallet brokers who are doing like crowdfunding, and they're like, we'll give you, if you give us something, we'll give you a percentage of the wallet or something like that. All of these digital asset platforms are really something to really, really vet and see, how do we know that we're not, in for a rug pull here? And you kind of alluded to it earlier in terms of like, are they creditable? Are they paired with, because again, folks do want to invest in cryptocurrency, right? Like they want to take advantage of this, industry and the opportunity to be able to create new avenues for, creating wealth in this space. But we have to be incredibly vigilant.
We do. And I would say, that the idea of like the rug pull schemes, that kind of comes back to what you were saying earlier about, well, how do we know someone's promoting this project, like a token or an NFT? Are you actually invested in it? And are you actually saying like, I should invest in this, or was this a scam? Like prominent athletes that you see promote this stuff, I think it's worth asking the question, like, did they actually legitimately promote it? Or is someone kind of stealing their identity and promoting it? Because we know with the rug pulls, there's this buzz around the project. So social media's influencers, they're exaggerating these marketing campaigns for it, and they're exaggerating the returns, promising high returns. And that's, it's all false promises, because once the coin becomes worth more, they then drain the liquidity from it, and then the token's value collapses, hence the phrase like pulling the rug out from under. So, we do know a lot of the time this is scammers that are hiding their identity, using a fake profile, maybe trying to exploit people. So there's the rug pull schemes, there's the pump and dump schemes where you're trying to inflate a token's price and then crash the market with it. So yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things where you should definitely read up and make sure you understand what you're investing in, and just look for those red flags and public resources explaining them.
Yeah. So looking ahead, what do you predict would be the next kind of big risk zone in digital asset management? Like any new fraud tactics or any cross-border enforcement challenges or anything as you kind of see like, this might become a problem?
I think we're going to start having like not less problems, but I think with the Clarity Act and the Genius Act, we're going to start seeing more structure in place and start to get ahead of problems a little bit more. And I'm going to share the link for Operation Shamrock in there because they just asked for it in the chat. Awesome. Yeah, so I think we're going to get better at this. I think we're also going to see blockchain technology used across so many different industries that I think we're going to get more experts per industry saying what's a problem and how to solve it and how to keep it safe. So you're going to see more of these niche crypto compliance specialists where like maybe they have a degree in healthcare and they've worked as like a nurse administrator for years. Well, they understand the systems that they're using at the hospital. They understand the interactions with patients and charting, and they're going to see the problems from a different perspective than the tech side is. And I think it's really important for both sides to come together to explain, how they see it and how they see the process working and where issues can be identified. Like one field that I think is going to grow a lot is the real estate field, because there's this really cool project out in Baltimore where they're using blockchain technology in the city of Baltimore to manage all their vacant properties. So for those who aren't from the area, there are parts of Baltimore where there's like 10 to 20,000 vacant properties, and the city of Baltimore has these antiquated land records that are, it's all paper copies in a warehouse. They're subject to fraud because you don't really verify people's information. They're not digitized. And of course, this is a problem across many, many different cities in America. And I really applaud the city of Baltimore because they've gone into this public-private partnership with this group called the Medici Land Governance to streamline acquisition, title verification, and really start the sale of these properties. So, for example, it's been very difficult to get title verification. It's been taking weeks, months. They're going through lien disputes. It's costing thousands of dollars in legal fees. And then that's a deterrent, right? There's like investors who would like to come in to buy these properties and then turn them into investment properties. But you're throwing up all these barriers. Like, it takes too much time. There's unnecessary legal expenses. So a really interesting avenue would be using blockchain to have this immutable digital ledger of property deeds, ownership history, liens that you can see transparently and instantly, and whether or not they've been paid when you go to transfer the title. So something like that reduces fraud, it reduces errors, and it allows the titles to be cleared expeditiously, right? So now you're bringing more investors back to the table, and you're also like wasting less hours of government time. Like, we don't need people in city roles doing work like this that can be automated. There's so many things to do in a city. Like, that doesn't need to be one of them. So I think that's just like a really interesting, unique example of a public-private partnership in a really innovative space that I see working.
Yeah. No, that's exciting. And what also keeps coming to mind with our conversation, Joanna, is all of the opportunities for new careers, new skill sets, upskilling our current skill set. I love the example that you shared about someone in the healthcare field being able to have a specific lens in terms of, how this might look on the other side, and even in the real estate space. So as we're kind of coming to the top of our time and our hour, wanting to just hear from you. You kind of rattled off already a couple, and then folks, please feel free to drop your last questions in the chat. But you kind of rattled off a couple of different types of new, um, job skill sets, niche specialties that are out there. What can we look forward to for the future of work in this industry?
I think as it goes more into TradFi, I think TradFi and DeFi are going to merge, and we'll see these, robust compliance programs, hopefully. And I think we'll just see this better integration of it. You're not going to have a crypto company and a bank. You're going to have people that work on both of those things. So I think along with the compliance piece, you need that education and brand awareness and fraud prevention. So you'll have people in marketing roles, like at a big financial institution, saying, hey, if X, Y, and Z are happening, stop, this is a scam, and here's how you spot it. And I think it's going to be every field across different roles, right? Like the PR side of things, the marketing, the compliance roles, the security and safety roles, if you're like a CISO or a CTO. So I think it's just going to become really integrated throughout all the different roles. Do you agree?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's really an exciting time, right? It depends on the lens in which we have our perspective, right? Because on one hand, they're like, oh, AI is going to take away so many jobs, all these jobs are going to be lost. But there's so much opportunity on the other side. And I forget the statistics, but there are stats out there that say, for every job that is taken away, there are new jobs that, doesn't even have really titles yet, but we know that they're going to be needed for the future as the technology grows, and in order for these new systems to be sustainable. So it goes back to what you were saying earlier about education. I think this is the prime time for everyone to just go down rabbit holes of knowledge and educating ourselves on these particular or the various different skill sets and what's gonna be of the future, right? So
Mhm.
I think it's just really fascinating. It gives us a lot of opportunity to dream and to explore, more so than anything. And so, taking our last couple of minutes, you talked a little bit about women in crypto. Wanted to
Mhm.
hear more about that. I know you guys do educational things as well as we do too here at Disruptor DAO. So we wanted to definitely hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Women in Crypto was founded by Amanda Wick, who was just a huge name at DOJ. She was an amazing attorney there, and we worked together like way back in the day. And she founded this amazing association for the women in cryptocurrency, which really was the idea was to make this global platform for education, networking, and advocacy. It's not just for women, it's also for supportive male allies. And it's for people interested in really deepening their knowledge in fields like crypto, digital assets, Web3, blockchain, any type of related technology. So one of the things that we've noticed, over the years, I've spoken at all these conferences, right? And this isn't a knock at the conference planners. I think a lot of the time conference planners, they're planning an event that's a widget to them. Like they're not in the field. Their job is to like facilitate the event. So what do
Mm-hmm.
you do when you look for speakers at these events? You go to the roster that you already have. You go to the people that go, yeah, I'll speak. And then I'm going to bring my buddy from this firm with me. So what we see a lot of the time is just panels that are made up of all men. And what we're asking for is just some thoughtful inclusion, whether it's having a woman on your panel, having a woman contribute to, an article that you're writing. And it's not just like, oh, throw a woman on there. It's for greater inclusion of qualified people, right? So advocacy for, research on the challenges that women face in the industry. We also offer education. We offer webinars, written resources, scholarships for students looking to get into the space. And we have a speaker directory. So I promise you, there are so many amazing women in this field that are experts in different avenues of it, that we encourage everyone to take a look at the speaker directory the next time you're hosting a panel. We all love to speak at different events. Someone's always willing to step in and help out. Like, we will find you someone completely qualified to speak. So I think it's all like really important work. And I also just think it's a great opportunity, especially for younger students, as we said earlier, to just see the different fields that are out there. Another problem we notice is like women, a lot of the time, maybe they're a little shy to like do a webinar or a podcast. They've never done one before. And that can be intimidating if you're like, just graduating college and you've never done it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's offering that help to like do a mock trial of one and get some experience and practice before you do the real thing, so that you're confident when you get up there and do it. So yeah, I say check out the Women in Crypto. We do webinars again. We have access to all sorts of courses. We have educational partners, and we're just really looking to help grow your skills in the field. And we host happy hours. We host meetups around conferences so you can network and get to know other women in the field. So no matter what country you're in, no matter what event you're at, you could actually just have like a really cool hour of like a coffee meet and greet and get to know like just some amazing people that you might not have met otherwise. And we try really hard to have events around conferences in addition to just local regional meetups for existing members.
Yeah, absolutely. And we at Disruptor DAO definitely look forward to connecting and collaborating more with you guys. So we are at the top of our hour. Thank you so much, Joanna, for being with us. I don't think there are any last minute questions in the chat. This was super, super valuable information. You are phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun, and it's been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks everyone who tuned in. Take care. Be well.
Okay, bye.